Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Packers podcast on my block from the Believe Network. I'm your host, Mike Wall. This week, we've got our Broncos preview. Our show is sponsored by betonline.ag. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, esports, football, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. So head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get into the action. Remember to use your promo code BELIEVE, that's BLAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. Fun fact, my fantasy football group is a bunch of business school friends, and they're from all over the world. And so half of them don't know anything about football, and the rest of us don't really care about fantasy football. But we just like to get on, have a reason to talk to one another. So we started taking all the money that we're putting in for the pot, and we just started betting every week. We won a 5-game or a 5-bet parlay last week for a 7.28 to 1 payout. Feeling pretty good about myself. Didn't pick a single thing because I'm the mush. But anyways, Packers are going as favorites here, and the Denver Broncos going to Mile High Stadium to play Denver. Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and the crew. This is really, if you look at this week coming off the bye, the way that things ended the last game we watched these guys, last couple games really, this is a big opportunity to get back on track for what I would consider a very winnable month. You look at the next 4 games. Broncos, this is a very, very winnable game. Vikings, not playing their best football, a lot of trade talk. Anytime you start hearing a lot of trade talks around your team and they're not in first place, you start going, hey, we got some problems. Broncos, trade talks, Jerry Jeudy. Vikings, trade talks, multiple players. Rams are actually on the come up. Matthew Stafford's playing at a high level right now. They're still missing some pieces. They're still missing some pieces on the defensive line. Even though they have Aaron Donald, they just don't have some guys on defense. That could be a score fest. And then you got the Steelers, who've got just a mishmash of things to figure out. Obviously, first team All-Pro, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, one of my favorite, all-time players, really, the defensive tackle position. But these are very, very winnable games. These are all games that are not very good. None of those teams are really good at establishing the run versus what we, consider our Achilles heel on a defensive side of the football. Starting here with the Broncos, they're just a tick above, I think, the Packers in that statistic. But you think about like the next 4 weeks. At 2-3, coming off your bye, knowing that you're going to a long stretch of the season, if you want to be in the playoff hunt, you've got to think about 3-1 at worst after the next 4 weeks. And not only 3-1, but like a vastly improved 3-1, because the weeks after that, you got the Chargers. Listen, Brandon Staley's probably going to get fired, but Justin Herbert, if you watch the guy play, Keenan Allen, if you watch them play, they're going to have a chance in every game. They're going to keep their team in it. I don't know why they're not better with Mac and Joey Bosa. You don't know why they're not just completely dominant with those two guys. I know there's obviously Derwin James. There's so many good players on that team. Why are they not more dominant? I don't know, especially with a defensive head coach. Another story. Then you play the Lions. Then you play the Chiefs. If you don't go 3-1 against the next 4 teams, you've got yourself, I'd say, a lot of issues to deal with over the long term. The good news is the Broncos have a ton of issues. And I got it on the ticker, man. I'm all for it, okay? This is a team, just to put this kind of in context as last season, because remember that Nathaniel Hackett's there. They bring Russell Wilson. This is a team people wanted to go to. Everyone thought Aaron Rodgers was going to go here last year. They started the year last year. They had Bradley Chubb on the field. Melvin Gordon was still kind of up, highly regarded running back. He was on the downhill slope, but he hadn't fumbled 1,000 times. Jerry Jeudy's on the rise as a potential star. They have this great secondary, Justin Simmons leading the way. They have Kareem Jackson. Pat Surtain's about to be an all-pro. They have dudes everywhere. This was one of those places where you thought, if I get the right guy at quarterback, we're going to go a long way in a very, very tough division. Hot team in need of a quarterback. Then they bring in Hackett and Wilson. We all kind of don't need to rehash that. Let's just say it was an unfortunate situation, not a good marriage. Guys were not performing. The whole Russell Wilson thing was laughable. They shipped Chubb to Miami. They get rid of Randy Gregory. They just got rid of Frank Clark. this is just such an interesting looking group now because you bring in Sean Payton. He's fresh off the desk. He's, a la Rex Ryan. Like I'm sitting right now telling you what's wrong with other teams. And he kind of presented himself. I don't know if he even did this, but maybe people just did this for him. But they presented himself as this like wise old sage that could fix this offense, that could fix Russell Wilson. It seems like 6-7 games into the season, week 7, I think we're in now. It seems like the head coach doesn't really like the quarterback. They're definitely running what I would call an antiquated system as compared to some of the stuff you see from San Francisco, from Miami, from some of these other innovative teams. A couple of quotes that I wouldn't usually run these out, but they were so much fun to look at. Will you blanking stop kissing all the babies? You're not running for public office, he told Wilson. Talking about, I think after the first or second game, there are a number of drives where we were late with personnel getting out of the huddle. We took a while. That has to change. We had to burn timeouts in the first half. I'm not used to doing that. In other words, I'm not used to doing that because I don't have these kind of problems. We have to be better. I have to be better. Russ has to be sharper getting the play in and out. We have to look at how much we have in. If we need a wristband, we will. The suggestion was that the wristband is like a lower level of thinking, which is complete nonsense. I don't know if that was a media aberration or something that Sean Payton was insinuating. Ridiculous. Here's what's more ridiculous. Earlier in the offseason, when he was bashing Nathaniel Hackett, bashing the former coaching staff, he said, shoot, they couldn't even get a play in. They were 29th in the league in pre-snap penalties, both sides of the ball. And then after week 1 or 2, you realize maybe it's just not the coaching staff. Another quote, and it's not just Russell. It was poor offensive line. It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. That's how bad it was. Right now, they're 19th in rushing at 106 yards a game. They're 20th in passing at 200 yards a game. Russell Wilson is 66% completion percentage, but he's been sacked 19 times. Some might come to the conclusion, I'm an offensive lineman, so I might come to this conclusion. Some other people might come to the conclusion that he is stat padding and holding on to the ball for too long. But what is indisputable, I believe, is that in the Chiefs game, whatever Sean Payton has come in and thought he was going to run turned into a poor version of let Russ cook towards the end. When it got into crucial situations and he realized either A, guys weren't open, or B, those weren't throws he could see or make decisions on. So Russell Wilson, if they're averaging 106 yards a carry or a game, Russell is actually averaging 6.8 yards a carry. Russell Wilson is averaging 6 point. I mean, they have a decent running game. McLaughlin's averaging 6.6, but it's the same idea. When you start thinking about how the team is constructed, what they're good at, what we can attack, this team has a lot of deficiencies, and we haven't even gotten to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive stats. Vance Joseph was a coordinator with me in Miami, head coach in Arizona for, I think, a year. Now the defensive coordinator in Denver. Now listen, they gave up a 70 burger to the Miami Dolphins, so take it for what it's worth. Last in points allowed, 31.7 points per game. Last in yards per game, 440 yards per game. 440 yards given up per game. That is, I never even heard of that. I mean, there's some insane things going on. Miami's putting up insane numbers on the offensive side. That's an insane defensive stat. They're last in rushing, 172 yards per game. They just got rid of Frank Clark. They traded Randy Gregory. Those guys weren't playing at a high level, but their names in this league. Why are they not playing at a high level? There's a lot of questions, but the one thing I have to say going into this game, there's a reason the Packers are only favored by 1. As bad as that looks, they're not that bad on defense. They played a good game last week. They have good players. They have a really good secondary with playmakers, Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain Jr. for 2 of them. They have guys. Let's look at this tape. And the first question you have to ask yourself, if I'm the Denver Broncos fan, is who is the guy? who's the guy on this team? Because Cortland Sutton right now is the best receiver they have. They're trying to get Jerry Jeudy involved. Okay, so they're putting him in the backfield. I think this is maybe the first play of the game. They do this a couple more times. They're trying to find some mismatches. They're trying to find some opportunities. They're going to run Texas route off this a little bit later on. So they're moving him around. Then you see the bottom of the screen. This is the guy. I mean, look how he comes in here and just waylays Eric Reed to open up this lane. So they've got guys playing hard. And what I'll say is they've got dudes blocking in the running game. Cortland Sutton's not the only one in block. Jerry Jeudy's blocking in the running game. These guys are putting in work. Start watching this stuff, you realize they're just not that talented. They don't have like a dog at running back. Their offensive line is okay. They're not great. I think they brought in Mike McGlinchey from San Francisco. I'm going to show you a couple of clips that maybe suggest that he's a good matchup that we like against Rashawn Gary and company. So they're averaging 4.9 yards a carry. You got to remember they're always behind in all these games. But they can run the ball a little bit. Like 4.9 is not bad. Even with the Russell Wilson padded stats, it's not bad. I said deceiving because when you're down all the time, you see a lot of 5 and 6 man boxes. You get an opportunity to, get some 10-yard bursts and maybe some explosive runs that aren't there. But these guys, I think, just fundamentally are, again, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but like a get-right game. You watch Chris Jones here, and Chris Jones, here's what I would say about this offensive line. They do enough single blocking with their scheme that if, like, this could be defensive tackles could have a huge impact on this game. You just see easy release for Chris Jones and play. You look again here, just completely shuts off, wipes 77, makes the play. I think this could be a reason I wanted to show a couple Chris Jones plays. Not only Chris Jones is a defensive player of the year candidate, just like they saw against Max Crosby last week, but this could be one of those Kenny Clark signature games because they do enough single blocks where he's going to get one of these guards. Maybe he gets McGlinchey on the tackle on the down block or the drive block to the backside, where you're going to get opportunities to get singled up, and Kenny has to just have a dominant performance because this stuff, like for me, when I see this is all day with Kenny Clark. He should be able to do this all day versus these particular athletes. Other people might make the play, but just a dominant performance. You see here some of the same issues that plagued the Green Bay Packers, plagued the Denver Broncos. Miscommunication here between the two tight ends. They think they're going to combo this up. They go to the wrong guy. So this stuff is happening all across the league. It's not just us. But these are opportunities. When you look at how to stop the Denver Broncos, you have to take something away. I think the number one thing you take away is their ability to run the football. I think right now you want Russell Wilson to have to drop back, and we'll show you, what that has kind of devolved into, I think, over the last couple of weeks. But I think this is the number one thing to do is stop that run game. One thing that Sean Payton he's old school, man. He gets it. If your second unit's in other words, if Kenny and Rashawn and if they all go out and you bring in all your backups, they're going to take advantage and they're going to run the rock. They got a lot of really good runs over the last couple of weeks against the second unit. When the second unit's in, and usually the second, so for fans that don't know, let's say first unit starts the drive. If you get a first down, maybe a second first down, they're going to sub out. After 3-4 plays, they're going to sub those guys out. And then you can pretty much guarantee when you get to the plus 40, in other words, when you start getting close to field goal range, they don't want to give up that field goal. Their free unit is going to come back in. So between like the minus 30 and the plus 40, there's a good chance you're going to see the second unit. And when you do, guys like Sean Payton, they're going to run the football down your throat, or they're going to work that deep play action if they think that they have a guy on like a Rashawn Gary who's a real difference maker in the passing game. When he goes out, man, it's time to hold the ball. I would expect the screen game to feature this week. Because I think they're going to like that matchup. I think they're going to like the matchup on our their linemen versus our linebackers. I think they're going to like the fact that when you watch this tape, if I'm Preston, if I'm Kenny, if I'm Rashawn Gary, I feel pretty confident I can get some penetration on this offensive line. You see, Russell holds the ball. He doesn't have great vision in the pocket. So what do you have to do with if you're a coach with a quarterback who doesn't have great vision and likes to run, you want to put in design plays like screens. Right? If Sean Payton wants to control this offense better, he's going to run screen games or run quick screens. Like he's going to run like predetermined routes, things that you're going to throw fades. He's going to do that because that's A, what Russell's good at, aside from improvising. And B, he can control what's going on. So I'd expect the run game to play heavy this week. Jerry Jeudy made this like really, really listen, this whole thing was weird. Steve Smith's an old teammate of mine. I'm sure everybody saw what happened on the sidelines. It'll be interesting. So after that game, I think he had like three catches. And Courtland Sutton's clearly the number one here. I mean, statistically they're similar. Courtland's got 4 touchdowns and to Judy's 0. But statistically they're pretty similar. But I think what the expectation is for Jerry Jeudy, and then coming off that and having to deal with the frustration of not getting the ball as often as he wants, but also having to deal with now, like Steve Smith, everybody knows who he is. And that was all over social media last week. So now you have to deal with this idea that you can't handle criticism, you're not thick-skinned, and blah, 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 blah. And you're dealing with these trade things. There's a lot going on. So this is a really talented guy. And like when you put him in a position like this, where now he's matched up on a linebacker and he runs a Texas route, I mean, this is all you can eat for a guy like Russell Wilson. He can make this throw all day. And again, this is one of those throws when I'm talking about like with Sean Payton. When they used to do this with Reggie Bush. When you put a really talented guy in a situation where he's going to play against a linebacker, the quarterback, listen, you might not throw it, but the read one heavy, hey, first read is this. We're going to this guy. This isn't like pick a side, read it out. This isn't like check out. We want the ball to go to the Texas route unless they do something dramatic that prevents it, because we know that this is a mismatch. Russell Wilson has been historically one of the best deep ball throwers in the National Football League. That ability to connect hasn't changed. He might not be as good at some other things that he used to be, but he can throw, especially when he knows where he's going with the ball. They run a sail 7 here on the bottom of the screen. He can throw this all day long. And when you have vision, in other words, if you're short and your eyes go downfield and you go to the outside, you all of a sudden have vision. And on plays like this is a predetermined play. He sees the coverage pre-snap, he checks the safety post-snap, and he makes the throw. He knows what's going on. This isn't about making layered reads. This isn't about you don't have to worry about a lot here. And these are the kind of plays that if I'm Sean Payton, I'm going to try to put into the menu of plays that are kind of at the top of the list, right? Things that open up his field of vision, things that force him to make a pre-snap decision and live with it, as opposed to dropping back, as we'll show here in a minute, and kind of running for your life. But Russell Wilson, make no mistake about it, he's not afraid to throw these balls. He can throw these balls. He's had a ton of success throwing these balls. They run under center play action. This is, again, kind of an old school, somewhat antiquated offense. I don't say that. I actually don't even say that disparagingly. I love their offense, but you have to sell the run. You look at the linebacker for Kansas City here. He doesn't buy this at all because all of the linemen are dropping back. Their pad level goes up. Poor fake by Russell Wilson. And obviously everyone has seen this play that he makes a very, very poor read. But, part of this is you're not doing a good job of selling the play action pass. And when your linebacker drops immediately on the snap of the ball because you're not selling it, you're going to put yourself in a position to be unsuccessful. These are the things, if you're studying tape at the linebacker position, whether it's Quay, whether it's Devondre, whether it's Isaiah McDuffie, understand the difference between him handing the ball off and not looks completely different from the end zone copy. I think this is their real game plan, at least going into. I shouldn't say that. I think this is where it's gone off the rails for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, and maybe nowhere more evident than maybe this last weekend against the Chiefs. They're doing a worse version of let Russ cook. They're doing a worse version of in other words, let Russ cook was, I'm going to drop back and I'm going to start looking at the rush almost immediately. If my first read's not open, I'm going to start moving around and make things happen. And this is what it looked like. Now, a lot of that has to do with the protection scheme. A lot of that has to do with the ability of the tackles in particular to not give up pressure because he likes to drop back further. Why? Because he needs to see. He's shorter, so you need a better field vision. You need to get back further. That kind of screws up the geometry of the pocket. I think at some times with these tackles, he doesn't really want to step up. But this kind of play where you think he's in their grasp and he ends up making a play to the tight end here for darn near a first down. That's a big deal. The other thing is they've got multiple issues when it comes to protection schemes. You see one of them here is 82 on Chris Jones is an absolute mismatch. And then you got Garrett Bowles with poor technique on the other side. But if you watch this scheme right here, the way you've set this up, you've put yourself in a position, Chris Jones is going to be left defensive end. And they might walk up guys. They might walk up a guy bossed up on the tight end. But McGlinchey doesn't have to block anybody here. And 82 is getting absolutely steamrolled. And it's like, are you kidding me? And you look at the other side, and if I'm Preston, like there's a formula for winning against Garrett Bowles. And it's really simple, right? His first step's wide. He turns on his second. You see that hands out to reach. You bull that outside shoulder with everything you got and make him turn, make him drop that back foot. Russell Wilson likes to get back deep, so he'll have to step up. That changes the timing of his throws. Now, all of a sudden, we're kind of moving around. I mean, it seems impossible that he gets that far back without realizing what's going on and then has to duck at the last minute. But this happens more often than not. This kid can make plays. This man can make plays, though. He can definitely make plays. So you look here. Sometimes you watch some of this stuff and you go, is this a scheme problem? Because, this is 4-on-2, no matter how you look at it. Now, when you're running the keep pass on the goal line, a lot of people are expecting it, obviously. There's a lot of tips and tells from the offensive line, obviously. You can throw the flat ball here. You have a chance to throw the flat and just get out of it. But Russell's going to do Russell things. And while it almost cost him a safety here, he ends up making a really big play and I believe getting the first down. I mean, this is what he's really, really good at. Now, again, on a gotta have it fourth down play, they put their tight end against the left defensive end. This is a gotta have it moment. And this is what, when you start, everyone wants to do some Russell Wilson bashing or what, if you're the offensive coordinator, and we used to do this with Bubba Franks. I remember one time we go to Tennessee when they have Javon Curse, and Javon's in year 2 or 3 when he was they call he was the freak, and they're they were 74 protection, and Bubba's in the huddle going are you guys kidding me? 74 protection was Tauscher helps with the right guard and then maybe pops out late, but essentially Bubba had to block Javon Curse by himself, and it's what are we doing? That doesn't make any sense. And that's what they're doing here. They're kicking back. 82 is trying to kick back. Luckily, he gets beat early. Luckily for the Broncos, he gets beat so bad early that Russell can escape outside. But this is a 4th and have it play. We got single coverage, double coverage. I mean, 3-man route, and they're running a lot of 3-man routes because they're worried about protection. Okay, so there's not a lot of people in a lot of these route schemes unless you're going to try to get it out early. But all these 5-step, 7-step drops, they're keeping guys in. Running backs in, tight ends in or chipping, right? They're running these 3-man routes. It's a hard life out there. But he doesn't even get rid of the ball. And so that's when you start, is he padding stats? Well, why would you not throw the ball on a 4th down? You certainly are going to give it up here. Looking again, they're in 11 personnel. They keep the tight end in. Lynchy gets beat here. And this is what I'm talking about. And I think, quite frankly, I know they paid this guy a ton of money. I said it last offseason. I didn't know if I love the free agent transaction here when they did bring him over, just because you watch this guy on tape. When you're that tall, sometimes you can punch too high and you get underneath. Chris Jones beats him badly here. I would imagine with Rashawn Gary this weekend, the leverage he can have, the stiff arm to the club, the chop, going in back inside with the arm over. I would imagine he has a big day with pressures. I don't know how many he'll get because I think Russell Wilson's still pretty elusive, at least in the last couple of weeks. But this is a very beatable right tackle. I mean, it's just too easy. That is just way, way too easy. Got another play action pass under center. And this is what I'm talking about. You've really essentially got a two-man route. I know you got the check down here on the right of the screen, but this is a low probability win because you've got a team that's playing too high and they're just going to jump both of these routes. You got to really play perfect football here. The timing seems off just based on where the backside cross is on the 38-yard line. It just feels a little bit off from a timing standpoint. Needs to be further over. But these are low probability win plays. And why I'm saying that is it always seems that way with the Russell Wilson team. And so when you're rushing them, if you have lane discipline and you feel like you're able to beat your guy, I just think there's a ton of opportunities to really harass him in the running game. And then it becomes a question of, are we going to spy or not? Because I think this is what he really wants to do, is just get out and kind of maneuver around. Let's just call it what it is. The Denver Broncos, I just put some stats up there. They're just not good. Points against 190, points per game 31.7, yards per game 440, passing yards 1,600 already. I mean, that's 14 sacks. I guess that's okay. Now they've given up 19, but 14 sacks. They've got a couple guys that can rush the passer. They've obviously gotten rid of Bradley Chubb last year, Randy Gregory, Frank Clark. Like, this is a depleted team. They've had some injuries. I think, Pat Surtain's certainly a really, really high level player. You think about, Justin Simmons being a high level player, Kareem Jackson. I was like Kareem when he was in Houston, but they just have not played up to level. They run multiple fronts. They run different coverages. They like to play a soft zone. They'll go to man every once in a while. Really, really last week, what you saw exploited was they'll play a 3-4, so you want to attack those edges. I don't think their outside linebackers are as good as they once were as far as personnel that they had there in the last couple of years, certainly with Vaughn, certainly with Chubb. You can block them with linebackers at times. You see how a quick toss out to the other side. They're bringing the safety down, gets caught here. Can get downhill. This is a good offensive line, good running backs. I mean, Kansas City Chiefs are a good team. You have to account for their play. I think the biggest thing when you think about attacking the Denver Broncos is just make sure their playmakers don't make plays on you. Make sure Justin Simmons doesn't make every tackle. Make sure Pat Surtain doesn't shut down one of your guys. Everybody else is manageable. These are all NFL players, but they're manageable. But like this kind of play, you just can't allow to happen. One thing you saw in this Kansas City game is Patrick Mahomes had a ton of time to throw. He ends up getting caught here, and they end up getting the pick. But they had a ton of time to throw. And they'll get into nickel, and they'll run multiple fronts. We saw this with against the Saints. They'll run like a 5-man front here, and they'll leave 47 up top. Josie Jewell. They'll bring down the safety. Or they might even go base defense here 4-3, and just instead of running their 3-4, they have 4-3 personnel, and they'll run it more like a 5-man line. Like a 57 front. We got a bunch look on the bottom here. They go play action, and what you love about play action against the Denver Broncos is their linebackers like to read eyes, so they don't drop to spots. They kind of backpedal, and there's this soft area because their safeties will play really deep. especially if you have some speed up top. So you think about like a Christian Watson kind of challenging the leverage of the safeties, and then you got some undercuts by, could it be Jalen Reed, could it be Romeo Dobbs, but these are in cuts that, this is a drag by Kelsey. Luke Musgrave could run this route, but these are plays that you feel like Jordan Love would be good at making, and these linebackers are allowing this to happen. And again, there's a lot of four-man rush. So against a play action pass with the timing and a four-man rush, these opportunities look realistic. Now, Kelsey's out here freestyling a lot during this game, but this was not one of those plays. Talk about plays that Jordan Love would love. Okay. When they're playing their soft zone stuff, when they decide to back up to the 40 and you can run quick outs, this stuff is easy to move the chains for the Green Bay Packers offense. We're looking for, you're still looking for, what are you good at? What do you do well? What does he like to do? And I'm of the opinion, quick outs, intermediate, in route, in cuts are things that Jordan Love does well. So the more that we can throw of those, and this team will give them to you, the more you can throw, the better. You look on the top of the screen here, you got two guys wide open. It's just, who do you want to throw to? Bottom of the screen, you got one guy wide open. Who do you want to throw to? Take the 5. I thought last week in particular, because of who they're playing, they traded rush for coverage. That just very simply means they want to drop 7 every time. So he had all day to throw, but I think Mahomes had 3 picks. Like, he did not have one of his signature games. And this is a division opponent, so they know each other very well. Green Bay Packers have not always have to do under center play action pass, but if you pull the guard, you see what happens to these linebackers. They are gonzo, right? You pull the guard and you just tag this with a quick scan. This is right off the tape. So they noticed, if you pull the right guard, you have an RPO look here. If that linebacker vacates, they are throwing this slant right now. Their head up on the slant. He wins inside. Little burst. We saw this play last year towards the end of the season. Went to Watson for a touchdown. It was Aaron Rodgers. Same kind of play, though. RPO, vacate the linebacker, make an easy throw and catch. I went back because I don't think, quite frankly, the Chiefs are a very good comp for the Green Bay Packers. I think the Jets are much closer. Why? Young quarterback. He is playing better. Offensive line that is a work in progress. Stud running back. Stud wide receiver. Good tight end. So they have kind of pieces in place. Don't have it all put together yet. But you watch the first series of the Broncos versus the Jets, and you see that the Broncos actually look like a pretty decent football team. And this isn't too long ago. So they're missing DJ Jones. He was a San Francisco 49er, played nose tackle there. He's a good player for them. If he comes back, Josh Myers is going to have all you can handle with this guy. I think he's a good player. Does really well in the run game. Not much of a pass rusher. Does a really good job here with his inside hand, forcing back the Jets center, really making this play. Bonito's got 5.5 sacks. Somebody's got to step up, next man up kind of idea with Chubb and Gregory gone. This guy has a good motor. I don't see Zach Tom personally having a hard time with him. I don't see Rasheed Walker having a hard time with him. I see him being an effort guy. If we hold on to the ball, we create issues for ourselves, and there are issues to be created, then he can capitalize on them. But I do not see him having an issue. Elijah Vera Tucker just takes a really bad set here and gets beat. That happens. But okay, this is the Preston Smith. This isn't just Green Bay. You run a 3-4 defense. Sometimes your outside linebacker gets caught in the slot, and sometimes the team's smart enough to put their wide receiver out on you. It doesn't just happen in Green Bay, right? This happens all the time. This is from the first series 2 weeks ago. Jets, Broncos, what do? Exact same route, exact same play, exact same result. Another San Francisco guy making plays here for the Denver Broncos in the middle. Talking about Mike Purcell now. But they'll do a good job moving off the spot. You see how key it is. If we're going to, the problem with staying in 12 to 21 personnel is when they go 3-4, that means Myers has to block guys by himself sometimes, more often than not. And he hasn't shown with his footwork that he is maybe as good as he used to be at doing that as we thought he was going to be maybe his first year or second year. The Broncos, as good as you can talk about their secondary, there are so many opportunities in the passing game. And you just see here, Zach just doesn't even see this guy. But, I mean, they literally didn't – I mean, they didn't even – there's what, 2 dudes running into each other. There's 4 guys over their guard and 1. And they just completely missed this. And so there's opportunities abound. Unfortunately, for the Jets, they didn't make them, but – that's how the ball, I mean, that's part of the deal is being able to capitalize on issues when guys make mistakes. So I got a couple keys to the game. Well, let me start with some matchups. Excuse me. Here are my matchups. Our running game versus their nickel defense for the reasons I just told you about not wanting to go in base. I think we have the ability to control the edges against their nickel defense. I think, Mike Lynchy, I think Rashawn Gary, I think that's an all day, let's have some fun with it matchup. I think Gary could have the leverage, the 6'8" thing, because he's not a big dude, he's just a tall dude. I just think it's really tough to get the bend that you need. And listen, you can look really good in the San Francisco 49ers offense and then look really not good in the Denver Broncos offense. And those two, you could be the exact same guy. It's just the way that they call plays, that, obviously playing for Russell Wilson, the way that he has to drop back maybe a little bit extra, or maybe he hangs back a little bit further. It just puts those tackles in a bind because, again, the geometry of the pocket changes a little bit. So I think that's a matchup that you have to like. Garrett Bowles, too. Garrett Bowles usually leads the league or is top 5 of the league in holding calls. So he's not going to give up sacks to Preston, but he could very well get a couple holding calls or some sort of procedure penalty. And then maybe the play that is the matchup that's most interesting is Quay versus Russell Wilson. Are we going to spy? If they're going to run that let Russ cook, these 2-man routes that are running right next to each other and don't really look like they have an opportunity. Sometimes they split the field and give him one half the field to look at with the other half he can run to. So if we do I would spy this team. I think I would spy this team because I think by the time he has to get to his second read or he can't see through the forest and he has to make a move, when Quay decides that he wants to go tackle Russell Wilson is not going to get away. In other words, if you keep Quay at the line of scrimmage and go, you know what? First time you break the pocket, man, I'm coming for you. I think he's purpose built to do exactly that. So I think if they decide to make that move, I think that's a big win for the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers have an advantage, a real advantage, with just about every play call they make offensively this weekend. I mean, you just look at this. Man, these guys are last in everything. And I know there was a 70-point game there that's a little bit different. That really skews their numbers. But even with they're still just playing bad football on the defensive side. Too many mental errors, too many too many coverage breakdowns, some poor tackling from time to time. They're better than they put on tape against the really elite level Miami Dolphins. You watch the Jets game, watch the Chiefs games, they're trending in the right direction. The question is, can you catch them in this moment? Now, we just had John Runyon Jr. talk about, hey, we're trying to expand the field. You're going to see a little bit of the Miami Dolphins offense this week. I don't know what he's saying. I don't know why he's saying that. It was kind of a soundbite deal. But if that was the case, 70 points it's a lot. That's a lot. So they've tried to pressure. They play the soft zone. They'll play man. They've just had a really hard time generating a pass rush before. They traded coverage for pass rush last week. And at times they've had hard time communicating on the back end. You see Travis Kelce has a big week last week, but Mahomes has multiple interceptions. And really, if you look at Kelsey, like we don't have Luke Musgrave's not going to run his own routes. I mean, Travis Kelsey is literally running like basketball routes in football yesterday or last week on Thursday Night Football. Like he's faking the linebacker out and pivoting the other way. He's just really going to a spot, reading the defense, and making things happen. We don't have that. So keys to victory: number one, spy Russell Wilson. Number two, take advantage of their linebackers looking in the backfield with that under center play action pass. Get the deep crossers, get the drag routes with Luke Musgrave, get the in cuts. And I think number three is, if you get a chance to slam the door shut on this team, close the door. You know, the Green Bay Packers, whether that's by getting up multiple touchdowns, that's by maintaining the same game plan, the same pressure when you do get up. But if you do get to a point where you're up 14, 17 points, shut the door on this team. For all the Russell Wilson talk, the one thing that I feel confident about is that he can put his team in a position to be successful when he starts going off script. And so when teams start playing super deep zone, they're rushing, they rush 3 or 4, they're giving him time, and now he can start scrambling around. If you let him get that time, historically in his career, he's done good with it. So with that said, slam the door shut on this team if you have the opportunity. The only question we have this week from a guy, I did the show a little bit early, so it's going to look a little bit different than normal, is that, with the Packers bye week being last week, is this kind of the opportune time? I think the obvious answer is right dead smack in the middle of the season is the best time to have the bye week, because then you're, just rested up. As long as you don't have the bye week in the first 4 weeks or like the last 4 weeks, I think that's probably good. If it's in, like week 6 to week 12, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself because you're tired, and then you can go for that final push. Momentum has a lot to do with that. Do you want to go in after losing a couple? Do you want to go in after winning a couple? Like, I think the circumstances of the team, are you beat up? Do you need the break? Are you rolling? There really is never a good or a bad time, except for, I remember early in my career, you could get like a week 1 bye, a week 2 bye, and that was an absolute disaster for teams. Luckily, the Packers were so good that they would never do that to us. I think if you're a good team, bad teams, bad records, like get bad schedules from the league. Packers always had good records, so we got very, very lucky with that. Packers this weekend, 1-point favorites. I think this is going to be a very difficult game, personally. I think that the Broncos are better than they've shown on tape, from the beginning of the season. I think they're improving. They're still not winning. I think the hard part now is, if I'm putting myself in that locker room, I think there's a ton of questions about Sean Payton. Sean Payton doesn't seem like he likes coaching these guys. In other words, Bill Parcells, that generation of coach, that model, that the way that you go about your business back then was much less about creating a relationship with your athletes, and it was a more formal, more authoritative way to go about business. What I say is the law. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm going to talk to you in a certain way that you probably would not take in 2023. These young guys are not going to take the way that some of these older gentlemen used to talk to us. I mean, anybody who played high school football that's my age knows exactly what I'm talking about. So this is an interesting thing, because you've got a guy who is very, very, very self-aware at the quarterback position, who wants to be regarded as an elite, who wants to be seen at tennis tournaments with glasses on when it's dark outside, that wants to be, at the red carpet of everything, that wants to be a social media darling. He wants all this stuff. And you've got the coach who has no idea about that world, has never been interested in that world, and believes fundamentally that that world is drawing success away from his, not only that individual player, but that team. So there's not a lot of joy. It doesn't appear outwardly that there's a lot of joy between, or there's not a lot of room for relationship building between that coach, that player, maybe the entire locker room. I don't know. It's just how it looks. There's a lot of, he's doing this wrong, that coaching staff is there's just a lot of talk that has nothing's been really, I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to coach this team. It just doesn't seem that way. And I'm just telling you that wears on a locker room. I don't know the guy at all. I'm just telling you that wears on a locker room. So if you're 1-5, you've traded Randy Gregory, you cut Frank Clark, you're thinking about trading Jerry Jeudy, you're basically saying, right? Not to get into this too much, but when you start jettisoning all these guys, what are you really saying? You're really saying it's not my fault. We don't have the right guys. Like, I can't fix the problems that you've created by bringing in the wrong people. Sean Payton is, I'm not saying that he's saying that directly, but what you're alluding to is, because you're in the Caleb Williams and Rex Ryan sweepstakes. Caleb Williams being the first pick in the draft because you're 1-5. Rex Ryan just being the first guy I could think of that, was a head coach, had some success in the National Football League, and has been on the desk, talking media for the last couple of years. Like, that's where you're at right now. And so for Sean Payton, if you don't think you're going to turn this thing around, you're certainly not going to probably make the playoffs this year unless something dramatic happens. You have to start going, all right, well, the famous Parcells, like, I gotta buy the groceries if you want me to make the dinner. I butchered that, but you know what I mean. He's saying, I don't have the right groceries right now. You need to get some better guys. And whether that's true or not, it's just when you're jettisoning, like, name guys, Frank, Gregory, maybe Jerry Jeudy, Russell Wilson's always being talked about. Can we get rid of his contract? This is a tough environment from a locker room standpoint to really get behind. And so I think every game they go into, I'm sure they got guys that just want to play for the love of the game, but there's enough guys on most of these NFL teams that are doing this because it's a job, not a passion. And so when this job no longer becomes fun, I think it's very easy to push those guys off the edge. So this is one of those teams where I think there's going to be opportunities during the team to break some of the guys that you're playing against. The question is, can you do it? Are we good enough to do it on the Green Bay side? Because the Green Bay Packers are not in that situation from a maybe toxicity standpoint, but you are in that situation from, you just don't have the same caliber team right now because a lot of them are young and you lost a Hall of Fame quarterback, but they're not developed enough to be considered like a top tier elite level group. They might be in a 2024, 2025. This might be one of the most talented rosters in the league, but it's not right now. So it'll be interesting, man. It'll be fun. I think kickoff's at 4:25 Eastern in Denver. Guys, check me out, Michael168 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. If you're enjoying these preview shows, if you enjoy this tape, the film analysis, whatnot, please hit the subscribe button, rate and review us on our Process to Perform channel on YouTube. Have a great weekend. I will see everybody after the Denver Broncos Green Bay Packers game. Break down the film and analyze. So enjoy the weekend, everyone.